Sorry, I'm recording because JT can't be here and he asked me to record. So okay.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Well, happy almost Friday. We have a lot to do today, and hopefully you will feel accomplished by this. I'm going to take that off so everybody can hear me better. Hopefully you will feel accomplished by the time you leave today and feel like you have a few things at least crossed off your to-do list. That's kind of the purpose of this workshop. And so we have a list of things, and I kind of put this up here for myself today. I do want to tell you that I have Zoom going on my computer here because there are two of your classmates that can't be here, Aaron and JT. So we are Zooming in for Aaron, and I'm recording just on my computer for JT. So if when you speak up, make sure you do it clearly so they can hear, if you would, please. We want to make sure everybody gets the benefit of our collaboration today. So let's start, if you would, on course content folder for today, session 7. Kind of how this went down with our session on Tuesday is we had roughly around 45 minutes of just discussion about things, and then I set them free, and I will mingle around. You guys can talk to each other. You can move around the classroom if you want, and you just work on your stuff. Whatever you have gaps in, whatever you need to work on, that's what you do, and that's kind of how you check things off your list. But I want to give you information, news you can use, so to speak, in the meantime. So let's start off, and actually, if you would, I'll backtrack a little bit, click on the assignments tab, and we're going to talk about 2 assignments. First being the mock interview assignment, and then we'll go into the LinkedIn profile assignment. And both of those are under the interview process, which is the very first one under assignments. So if you will navigate to that, you'll be with me. So skip down to the mock interview and reflection under the interview process. This is all kind of part of a package, all these things. We're going to work on resume and cover letter today, but let's talk about the mock interview and reflection first. Now, this isn't really due until the end of August, but I want to let you know what to expect. The main thing you need to do, and this is going to be just a succinct 3-page document that tells you really everything you need to know and is what you need for this assignment. So you're going to want to click on the attachment there, OT 630 mock interview assignment 2021, and that will probably download it straight to your desktop or wherever you download stuff. And that is going to be your instructions and also your writing surface for what most of what you need to turn in. There are 3 things you'll need to turn in for this part of the assignment. So here's how it's going to work, and I'm just going to walk you straight through it. Really, I'm just reading off this document, but I'll kind of add my 2 cents worth in as I do that. Okay, so obviously the purpose of this is to prepare you for the interview process. And sometimes I think when I start talking about this, it seems like that part, the interview part, is a million miles away, but it's not. A lot of times students will start interviewing somewhere during their second level 2 field work. You don't have to, so don't feel like you're behind or you're a loser if you don't. Sometimes people will wait until closer to graduation, and sometimes people even wait till after graduation or after they pass the NBCOT exam the first time they take it. Hint, hint. I plant that seed every time I can. And that's all okay. It depends on your individual financial situation and all of that. But just in case, I don't want to wait. I want you to be prepared. I want you to hold on to any resources that I give you in this course or that you come across yourself. Maybe make a folder for it on your laptop, or if you're into paper folders still, that. Are y'all laughing? I know that's old school, right? I should get my walker out. Oh, Allie. Okay, all right. We can both get our walkers out. Yeah. So however you keep up with stuff, I would highly recommend for this part, for the job interview stuff, you hold on to this stuff, because what happens every year is some people don't. And then 6 months from now, they're frantically chasing after me, emailing, saying like, how did you say I apply for a state license? Or what do I do about a letter of recommendation? And we're going to talk about all that stuff in this course. So you will have a little treasure chest of what you need for all that. And it'll be at your fingertips. So the purpose of this assignment is very clear. It's to prepare you to really sharpen your skills so that you have all the opportunities and the options that you want at your disposal in terms of job options. You know that there are a good number of jobs for OTs out there. Sometimes I think when you look at posts on Facebook, you'll see some negative Nellies out there or negative Neds. Don't put a whole lot of stock in that. I had one of our recent alums one of our recent grads email me just last week, and this person has just started the job search, and they were saying, I'm starting to get discouraged. I've seen some stuff on social media that makes me think, man, I'm going to have a hard time finding a job, and what's up with that. And I think it's kind of like what happens, honestly, to educators with course evals sometimes, and it happens to restaurants on Yelp or businesses, if you notice. Who tends to speak up are the people with complaints, or the people who love you. People who, are in the middle don't usually say things because they're just cool with it. But who usually says things are the squeaky wheels. All right, we know this. This is a fact of life. Don't put too much stock. Don't let it throw you into a tailspin if you see people posting like, there's no jobs, or there's a 40% cut in jobs, or you can only make $10 an hour as an OT. Do not listen to that stuff. If you start to let it panic you, you come to me and I'll say a few choice words that might not be appropriate for this class. That is CRAP. So it's not true. So you will, with that said, what I'm really trying to say is you'll have options. Now, you might not be able to find your dream job in Senatobia, Mississippi. I don't know why that place came to mind. You might not be able to live exactly where you want to with your exact dream job with your dream salary. I'm just saying you might have to compromise, but that's what we do. We're OTs, right? We adapt. We know that there are compromises and adaptations that we have to make, and we're willing to do that because we see the positive in things. That's what OTs do. So we'll talk about that as we go through this stuff. Sometimes your first job, in fact, oftentimes is a stepping stone to other things. And you use it as a way to build your skills and build your resumes and or your resume. I almost look at it as another field work or a continuing education, or you might have heard, and anybody with kids, or if you've been around somebody with kids, sometimes you hear that first few months of life is like the fourth trimester, where the baby's really kind of finishing their, growing up. And that's why there's a lot of crying and, sometimes that colic and that kind of stuff. Aaron can back me up here probably. It's kind of like that with your first job. Sometimes there's some growing pains, and it's not usually just completely smooth sailing perfect, but that's okay. Know that that's normal if that happens to you. So all this to say, you may not interview and think, oh, it's perfect. Like, did I die and go to heaven here? But still, it's a really good opportunity. And I want you to have that. So let's make your interview be really good, so that if this is what you want, you've got the option. Let's make your cover letter and your resume be as good as it can. Let's make your LinkedIn site be as good as it can. Let's make it all be what frames you in such a way that you have all the opportunities that you want. And then the choice is yours. The world is your oyster. That's all that was leading to. So look at the learning objectives, because this is specifically how you are scored and graded really on this. I want you to show me that you know what professionalism looks like in terms of your appearance. Now, I know that's superficial, right? But that's kind of how the world operates. If you go in and interview for a job and you've got like weird makeup on and your hair, kind of in a messy bun, or looks like it hadn't been washed in 3 or 4 days, and you got on some holey clothes or something real low cut, or your bra straps are showing, your butt's hanging out, you're probably not going to get the job offer, right? I mean, that's just a fact of life. It really is not. You might be the best OT in the world, but people aren't going to see it like that. And that's a fact of life. So we want you to know that, I want you to show me that you know that. Also, that you can respond to interview questions concisely and effectively. So I want to really underscore that word concisely, because you know how when you're nervous sometimes, like maybe picture yourself on a first date, or at a cocktail party or something, some event where you don't know anybody. And some of us have a tendency, myself included, to talk a lot. We're uncomfortable with the silence, so we put in that filler language and we become chatterboxes. And that happens in interviews, and people notice it. So if you practice, if you're prepared for the questions, kind of, not over rehearsed, and if you're relatively confident, you can be concise. You don't blah, 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 blah too much. That's really a technical term there. So I want you to be good at that. I want you to show professional behavior throughout the interview process. And by that, I mean never, ever, 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 ever trash or dog a fieldwork site, a company, or a fieldwork educator or a practitioner, even if they deserve it. I hope this doesn't happen to anybody, but occasionally you might come across a professional, an OT or somebody who's OT adjacent, or a facility that isn't the cream of the crop. Maybe they say something that isn't culturally responsive or, client centered, or they do something that isn't just the best practice. Let's don't bring that up in the interview, right? That's for another time to discuss, because it doesn't really so much reflect on that person or that facility when you do, but it does reflect on you, right? It's kind of like if I start talking to you about, a student in the second year class, like, oh my God, this girl does this and this and this. Aren't you in somewhere in the back of your head thinking, does she trash talk about me? That's what they're thinking, or they're questioning your professionalism, your maturity, your ethics. And that's important. And then last but not least, I want you to identify your own strengths and need for improvement. That's code for weakness, to prepare for the interview. And I want you to do that now so that you can build on those areas of need. You've got time. Some of y'all, many of y'all on that last knowledge check listed things, and I wanted to bring that up. Some of those things I didn't necessarily agree with, and I think you're maybe being a little too harsh on yourself, or you don't see yourself the way that I do, and probably other people do. But I wanted to also say, so if that is valid, let's work on it. You got time, and you have the complete right platform going into level 2. If you're unsure of yourself, if you think, well, I suck at assessments, maybe that is true, and that's okay. Most people do at this point. You're not great at assessments. You haven't had that much practice at, but this is the time. The red carpet's being rolled out to you. So think about that as a teaser for a goal that you can think of for yourself going into level 2. And then when that question comes up in an interview, which it probably will, you'll have less to say and to think about, like what's something you want to improve on. You won't have like a long laundry list there. One more thing, areas of strength. I always say this to OT students, and I really want you to hear me when I say it. You know how AOTA has that theme about let's focus on the distinct value of our profession of OT. What's a distinct value of OT in working with clients with, who've had a stroke or whatever, rheumatoid arthritis or anything? What sets us apart from PTs or speech therapists or social workers or nurses? Well, let's reframe that and think about it. What is your distinct value? If you're interviewing for a specific position and so is somebody else in this room or from this city or this state, somebody else who has really good grades, because most OT, maybe all OT students really do, or you're not going to make it through the program. You're going to have some service things. You're going to have some leadership things. But what sets you apart? Because every single one of you has something. So, and you'll definitely have something, in the next 4 or 5 months. Things you do, things you realize and recognize about yourself over level 2 field work, and even in reflection from over your time here on campus or, during your classroom time. If you are stuck with that, because I think an overall kind of quality of OTs and OT students is we're pretty humble. We don't like to toot our own horn. So if you get stuck with that, come back to me or one of your other professors or one of your classmates, and we'll help you with that. But I want you to don't go into an interview not being clear on that. There'll be something that you and only you bring to that table. Make sure that you're clear on that. It may be your EBP presentation. It may be a certain thing that you got from a leadership job you had, or a work study thing, or, something even from undergrad, or just some kind of realization or an interaction you had with a client or family member or colleague during level 2 or another field work, something like that. But think about that. That's why I encourage people to journal in some form or fashion during level 2. You don't have to, dear diary, today was the best day of my life. You don't have to do that, right? It's not middle school. We're not all 12-year-old girls, or none of us are. You can just write words in a list. You can, cartoon it out. You can just talk to somebody about it, and then maybe jot down a few things so later you remember the conversation. Don't discount that. It may seem a little fluffy right now, but I promise you it's not. All right, moving on. So here's what you do. Here's the process. You are going to look at this colored thing down here, the colorful thing I shared in the announcement, and pick one of those. Maybe none of those are your dream job. That's okay. Let's just pretend like these are the openings that are available wherever you're applying for a job in the moment that you need a job. Which one of them do you think fits with maybe your fieldworks experience or your interests and passions the most? Just pick one. All right, so that's one thing. That's the job you're going to be applying for in this mock interview. Now, your second thing is you're going to need a helper. It can be somebody in your class. It can be a friend. It can be a family member. I guess it could be somebody off the street. You just need somebody who will be an interviewer for you. Now, I would recommend it not be somebody that makes you laugh a lot, because you're going to video record it. And that'll be the one part that is off this piece of paper, other than this piece of paper, that you're going to turn in. And I'm not going to watch it with a fine tooth comb and say you were blinking too much, or I saw you, it's not like that. The only thing I'm really looking for is, did you do the things in the learning objectives? I'm going to show you the scoring rubric in just a second. And then the other thing is, if you score yourself too hard, if you're too harsh on yourself, I might go back and say you know what, I think you did fine on that. Because that's what I've seen in the past, is that people say I blew it. It was terrible. I'm the worst. I mean, I've seen that so many times. I see that in simulations too, where people say I'm terrible. I'm never going to be a good OT practitioner. But I saw on the other side of the window, and I'm like, what? Were we in the same? Because I saw nothing like that. So that's what I'm looking for. So don't be nervous about that. You are going to view the footage and score yourself using this rubric I'm about to show you. Okay, so you'll need a device. Can be anything that records. You can use your computer net. You can, I don't know if you guys know this, but you can just open up a Zoom and just make it like you're going to have somebody join, like Erin is, but you don't have to have somebody join. Just hit record and it'll record. You can do whatever recording thing you want. You guys are, the age where you know how to do that. But make sure it's recording. And then I, make sure it's also recording, so you can low tech it, get a water bottle and, do it like that. You don't have to have anything high tech. Don't buy anything, is what I'm saying for that. But make sure it's recording where we can see you. Don't let it be doing like the ceiling or your shoes or something like that. Make sure it's getting a decent shot. I don't really care if it gets the interviewer or not. So it needs to be where you're gonna sit or when you're doing it. So that's, and then there are specific instructions for the interviewer. There's a whole page that I would say you need either email or print out and just give to the interviewer. I don't really want you to read it too much because that'll kind of hurt your benefit from this. If you really get into that too much, it's okay if you just copy and paste it into an email or just print it out and hand it to your interviewer. It tells them everything they need to know right there on that one page, including the questions I want them to ask you. And then after they ask you about 10 questions, which will take them probably about 8 to 10 minutes, I want them to give you some feedback for a couple minutes, and it tells what kind of feedback they give you. Now, we can only control certain things in life, right? So if they ask you only 5 minutes of questions, that's I'm not going to score that against you. If they ask you 15 minutes of questions, I'm not going to score that against you. If they forget and don't give you any feedback, I'm not going to score that against you. Hopefully they will read it and do it, but let's just worry about what we can control there. Don't sweat the small stuff is what I'm telling you. Mainly, I want you to squeeze this like a sponge and get as much benefit out of it as you can. And don't worry too much about your grade, but rather worry about the benefit of it. So let's look at this about the interview is not supposed to be flawless. Really, I'm not looking for perfect. In fact, if it is perfect, I might be a little suspicious that you practice the heck out of it, which is not what I want you to do. That's not real life. You're not being scored on perfection here. I'm about to show you what you're being scored on. Please don't record, and then if it's 1 or 5 things that are minor, do it again and do it again. And for one thing, that's going to really be annoying on your interviewer friend. And on you, then later you're going to be like, wow, that assignment was so time consuming. It shouldn't be. This really should take you less than 30 minutes all in. Besides the preparation for it. So make sure you go through all the materials, including the resources you're going to go through today before you sit down and do it. Okay, so you may customize your resume a little bit. You'll definitely write your cover letter for this interview, just like you will in real life. It's not a one size fits all. You don't just write one cover letter or do your resume once and never update it for all interviews you may go on. I think that's probably the biggest mistake that new grads make in the interview process is they don't change either of those things. They're just like, hello, I'm interested in the position you posted. Please see my resume attached. Blah. That's like the most basic. That is not going to set you apart. When you're writing your cover letter, write it to, if you look back at the colored chart here, write it to the Human Resources Department representative. Not to me, not to your friend or family member that's doing your interview. So you write it to, Stacy Townsend, there you go. Even though you're going to have a different interviewer, because that's how it often will work. Like you don't really know who's interviewing you, but you do know here, whoever is in charge of the job posting, that's who you're writing the letter to. So there's all your instructions. And then here, coming up here, down below is the scoring rubric. Now, after you've done the 8 to 10 minutes of interview questions and couple minutes of feedback from your interviewer, you're going to watch the recording and score yourself. So this is where that last objective comes into play, where you are looking at your strengths and areas of need. So what's in this criteria is the learning objectives. So did you fully meet it? Did you partially meet it or no? So you can write stuff in there like, I think I was good with this, or yeah, I had a. Now, let me say this, what is professional attire is not scrubs, not for an interview. I know it is for presentations and OT school, yeah, but scrubs is not professional attire for an interview. You don't need to wear black tie stuff, don't wear cocktail party stuff, I mean, I wouldn't even wear like I'm too casual for an interview because I have a t-shirt on. What to wear for an interview. You need to, wear something fairly nice, like probably something you ironed. It's better to err on the side of a little too dressy than a little too casual. If you don't own an iron, you might go to somebody's house that does. Or at least get it hot out of the dryer. And be modest on your accessories and your so forth. So for all of that, you will score yourself. Then you will write a reflection. Here are your prompts. So just type it, or if you want to print this out and handwrite it, right here and just respond to those questions. This last page is what you give to the interviewer. So it tells them exactly what to do. Now, I don't care what they wear. You need to wear interview attire. They can wear sweats, they can wear shorts, they can wear their pajamas or yoga pants. I don't care. They probably won't even be on the camera, but if they are, it doesn't matter. So they can come as they are, because we don't want them to, be inconvenienced. We're just happy that they're helping us. Any questions about that stuff? Yes, Sydney.
I noticed that one question at the bottom of that said, what do you expect your salary to be? So
Yes, we're about to talk about that.
that's one thing I've always I don't want to tell them something when they might would pay me more and shortcut myself.
That's a tricky one. And until a couple of years ago, we didn't talk about that in this course. No one asked me, and I kind of just didn't think to talk about it. But then people started asking me when they were getting close to interviewing, and I started thinking, hey, we should talk about that. Like, let's air it out. It's, it's like a fungus. It just grows if you got it covered up. So we're going to talk about it. Yes.
So it says to design our documents and interview after that go on to level 2 field work. So do you want us to include our level 2 field work stuff on our resume?
Yes. So in this interview, you are playing yourself as you are now. So you'll talk about, here are my planned level 2s. What you know about them now. If they say, well, what all assessments are you going to do? Do you know for sure now? Probably not. You may know what's you've been told or what you heard on that. And that's what you say. So I wanted to keep it where you're not making up a fiction, because that just gets, I'm a terrible liar, and I don't like making other people make stuff up, because it just gets really confusing. So, and really kind of same for your interviewer, unless they really want to make up a persona, they can just be themselves. I mean, they don't have to be like some, movie star or something, And honestly, that'll probably keep it from being like a giggle fest. Anything else? Erin, you got anything? I don't want to leave you out.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the LinkedIn assignment briefly, and then we'll get into the money. So if you go back to the assignment page and then look just at the LinkedIn profile, you will see the scoring rubric right there. Now, some, or maybe all of y'all may already have LinkedIn profiles, and that is completely fine. I just, and it's also fine if you don't have one. One thing Tuesday that came up that I thought was kind of funny, a comment somebody made is, oh my God, this is like Facebook. I thought that was really funny. And then someone said, well, professional Facebook. It kind of is. I mean, there's a lot going on there. It is supposed to be professional. Sometimes people put stuff on there that's not the most professional, but there are people who find jobs through LinkedIn. It also is a good way to network. And you may or may not be aware that most people who find jobs today, whether it's your first job or a subsequent job, do it through second degree contacts. This is a statistic that comes out of Forbes magazine. And so by that, it's like somebody who knows somebody. So that may be you looking at the UTHSC OT alum page, and I post, hey, one of our alums works somewhere that is, and they're saying they have an opening. And then you don't know that alum, but you know me and I know that alum. So you go there and apply and you get the job. You know, it's that kind of a thing. Or it's someone that you have a connection with, like maybe one of your level 1 fieldwork supervisors, and you see them on LinkedIn and you connect with them, and then they hear of an opening somewhere and they post about it, or they think of you like, oh, she would be perfect for this, or he would be just right for this, and they contact you that way. So it's good to have, I mean, I don't think you have to get on there all the time, but it's good to have a presence there and to link it to an email that you check, not like a dead email account. So I have a couple resources there that have to do with healthcare professionals and important things to include, but mainly what you, and there are lots of YouTube videos, and I find the help, like the tutorial part of LinkedIn, very helpful if you're trying to figure out how to do something on there. But here is the criteria that you are gonna, you want to do a customized URL, not just the generic one that they give you that has like 1 million characters to it. When I say professional looking profile photo, you can use one that you've gotten made here on campus, like a headshot or something else. I mean, you could get somebody to take your picture against this wall or something else, just not you in a swimsuit or, kissing your dog. Let's just don't do that. Use your common sense with that. If you do put one that isn't the most, I'll give you some feedback when I review it. I just want to make sure this is as good as it can be before you start publicizing it when you're out there ready to get in the field. A question that came up on Tuesday is, what if you don't go by your actual first name? Like Maddie asked me, like she never goes by Madison. And you can use your judgment on that. What she and I decided is that she should just put Maddie. She was like, I wouldn't even know who somebody was talking to if they said, hey, Madison, or, dear Madison, she'd be like, me. Use your judgment. I mean, I would not put Boo Boo or, some nickname that you had with that. And for me, like my close friends call me Steph, but professionally, no one calls me that. So I wouldn't put that on there. So use your judgment on that. If you go by your middle name or, by a nickname like Maddie, that's okay. I would recommend that you either use an email that's not your UTHSC email, or within 6 months after you graduate, you change that email. Just kind of make a mental note, because usually that email account expires within 6 months. It's okay if you leave it that way for now, but usually, you'll all have jobs by that time, and you could change it to your new work email or a Gmail account. Now, you don't want an email account that has like some kind of ridiculous, goofy, embarrassing, or inappropriate email. I mean, I was telling them my older daughter's name is Madeline, and she only goes by Maddie. But when she was in middle school, her very first Gmail account was Mad Maddie. And we were laughing about that the other day, and she was like, "Why did I think that was a good idea?" And I was like, "Because you were like 13. That's why." And then we were further making fun of my niece, who, when she was that age, was obsessed with the Jonas Brothers, and she made her email be Lily Jonas. And so, don't make yours be, whatever Jonas, or, let's don't do that. Or, beer guzzler, or something, anything like that. So you'll see what I'm talking about if you're not sure what I'm talking about the 3 skills for endorsements. Once you get in there, you'll see what I'm talking about. Connecting to 10 or more other people. Those can be people in this room. It can be me or other faculty members you see on there, or just other people. Some people were connecting to their parents. Some people were connecting to some of y'all's boyfriends and girlfriends, I think. It doesn't matter. I just want you to have connections on there to kind of see how that works. Maybe look for your level 1 fieldwork or level 2 fieldwork educators. Definitely connect to UTHSC on there for sure. So that's what that assignment looks like. And questions about that? Okay, well, I'm around. I'll be mulling, whatever the word is, around if you think of questions or want me to look at yours. If you're wondering about either for that or for your e-portfolio about the header, like the picture that goes behind your professional photo, I like Canva, C-A-N-V-A, that's on there, and don't pay for it. Just use the free one. There actually is, I think it just says digital header or something like that. So it's a long, skinny one, like a hot dog is how I always think of it. And you can do kind of a plain one, not super busy or fancy, and download it. And then you can use that on there if you want to create one. Just go to that for an idea. Some people were doing that on Tuesday and they liked the way it turned out. Okay, back to today's course content, and let's talk about money, 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 money. Here's the thing that everybody loves to hate to talk about, or hates to love to talk about. The slides that I've got on there, the images, are from the most recent AOTA salary survey. So this is really from 2019. And I think because of COVID, they're a little slow in getting the 2021 out, but it should be out soon. And it's available to all current AOTA members. So you will see that coming out, and it'll be interesting to look at and compare when it does come out. So a few things I want to point out. Make sure and pay attention to years of experience, because sometimes I think new grads or younger therapists tend to look at just the average salary, and that may not be right. But it's okay to look at this one, 0 to 1 years experience, and then look at the median. So, mid 60s, around 65,000. The other thing we want to look at is region. And then the third thing is the practice setting. Those are kind of your 3 variables. So if we go down to the slide number 2, the region, if we look in South Atlantic, there we see a little more. But keep in mind that's for all levels of experience. So even somebody with 25s or 30, that's what they're looking at as an average. So that's something to think about. And then if you go by state, so they even break it down by state. So I put all the states on there, but go 2 more slides and you'll see there at the top, Tennessee, the median is 70,000, for all the years of experience, but still good to know. So we're still talking, probably for new grads, somewhere in the range of 60 to 70, maybe closer to 60, up to 65. And then the third variable that I said, practice area. So this one's pretty important. And I think it's something that sometimes catches some people off guard, what the difference in that might be. If you look at outpatient clinic, so look at the bolded ones. That's really actually from 2018, but it's probably roughly the same. So 67,000. Home health is always the highest. It often can be the riskiest because if people cancel their visits, or if there just aren't people on the caseload, you just don't get paid. So it's, it can be risky, and it's kind of like an ebb and flow. It's much like a commission job in sales. Some months you're just making a killing, some months not so much. Hospital, that's usually somewhere right in there in the middle. Nursing homes, that's usually towards the higher end. It's harder to find and retain people for that kind of setting. And so you see across all levels of experience what that looks like there in the settings, different settings. Now, look at the trends. I think this is interesting. If we're looking at over the last 10 years here, what we see in this trend is about $1,000 a year in average salary bump. So that's not huge, but I don't think any of us went into this profession to get super rich, right? You probably should have gone into business or engineering or something like that if you thought you were going to be a millionaire or squillionaire. We have different priorities. We want to make a good living and be able to get a good job and be stable with our finances, and you will. But that's what it looks like. So if you're thinking, well, what would it be in 2022? You can kind of follow that trajectory out pretty reliably. Now, just under that, you'll see a couple of links that you might want to look at. And one we'll look at together is this OT potential salary guide. And I want to call your attention to that because what they do is something really nice. Rather than it just being this information just being based on an AOTA survey, they base it on 7 different sources. So you could think Dr. Mitchell would like this because it's really more evidence-based. It's across different sources, including Glassdoor, and I'd like to see Indeed on there too. I don't know why they didn't include that because there are a lot of positions on Indeed as well, but you can kind of see that there is some variation on there, which I think is interesting. I'd like to read some kind of an analysis or a narrative that somebody who's a salary expert had on that. But you can see that there's some different variation in that. But if we look at the average there across all of those, across all settings, across all experience levels and all regions, we're getting just over the mid 70s. So I feel like it's pretty good. It's pretty reliable and then this author goes on to talk about mean and median and mode and those things and to discuss it. So that's worth reading. And they also talk about working PRN, and I'm going to give you something to read next week more about PRN because I want you to know what that means. That stands for as needed or required, and it's used a lot in pharmacy, like with prescriptions. But it also is a really valid term when we talk about working. You can sign a contract or be hired PRN, and that means they just call you when they need you. You should get a higher rate of pay if you are working PRN, because you're not going to get benefits. So they're not paying you for that. You're not getting sick time. You're not getting insurance, any of that. And also, you don't know when they're going to call you. They might call you the morning of, they might call you, I mean, they might call you a week before and they might just need you for that day. Sometimes though, they'll call you and say, you know, such and such is pregnant and we know in a couple months she's going to be out for 3 months. Can you cover? And then you're sitting pretty because you're making $50 an hour, maybe more, for 8 hours a day for 3 months. And that's nice. You're still though not getting sick time built in, no vacation time, no benefits. So you should be making that higher rate. So I want you to have that information about PRN. It's not apples to apples, full-time employment versus PRN. It is not. You should make more money per hour if you work PRN. It's less of a safety net. So let's boil this all down. If you are going in to that job, like Sydney said, and they ask you, what do you expect to make? So think about the region, you know, it depends. If you're here in Memphis, you know, it's one thing. If you're in Nashville, it's going to be a little lower because even though the cost of living is higher there. And the reason is because everybody wants to live in Nashville, most people. And it's very popular. And there are more OT schools right around there and OTA schools. And so there are more people looking for jobs there. So the pay is lower and there are fewer jobs open there. That's just how it is. Now you can find, I mean, we had a number of our grads that just graduate in May find jobs quickly there because all their stuff was stellar. Their interview, their e-portfolio, their resumes, all that was stellar. And, you know, they are stellar. If you are on either side of the state, you can expect a little more money. What type of setting? That's the other thing to think about. So, I would say you can expect anywhere from 60 to 65 and feel like you're pretty safe. If they ask you, this is what I would say. Now you can say what you want, but this is what I would say. As somebody just going into the field, you know, I'm still learning about what is reasonable to expect. And I'm willing to negotiate within reason. I am aware, or I've done some reading from different sources about what the average salary is in this area and in this type of setting. So let them know that you didn't just fall off the turnip truck. You're not DUM dumb. Yes.
One thing you haven't touched on, and I was just curious,
Yeah.
but like they're looking at your experience as an OT, because obviously you just graduated and you're working in the field of OT. But what if you have previous experience in another degree? Like, do they consider that?
Yes. Yes. Especially if it in any way plays into that position. So I would say, like for you, and this might be relevant for other people too, if you have some leadership or some marketing or public health or teaching, or, you know, we've had students come through the program that were educators and nurses. And I've told y'all, we've had a couple of PT assistants come through. That plays into it. And I would play that up, especially in the interview, but, you know, as well as in your cover letter and on your resume. If you are, say, going to work for a smaller company, that kind of stuff will be important because they'll be looking for somebody that can they probably don't have like a whole human resources and marketing and department, and they don't have public health experts. And you know what I'm saying? Like their experts are their therapists, or they have to hire consultants, and that's big money. So I would play it up And you could expect to be on the higher end of that. Yes.
Do you actually give them the number, or do you just say, like, I have this research, like, I'm willing to negotiate, like, we can discuss this further, like, when HR contacts me again? Or do you say, like, I'm excited?
I would skirt around it, just like you just did it first. And why do y'all think I say that? I mean, I'm generally not one to skirt around things, but
They know they
and they'd be
can-
like, oh, look at Dad, he's a sucker. Yeah.
He could have got 10,000 more,
Yeah.
but he said that, so now he's not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you never want to undersell yourself, but what if it's the opposite? What if you're like, yeah, I'm really looking at 65, and they're like, look at Ted, who does he think he is? He thinks he's all that.
Do they typically ask you, like, in an interview, like, what you want, or is that more like once an official offer is made, then it comes up for discussion?
It's not super typical, I'll say that. It depends often on the size of the company. So my first job, and actually my first interview, was at Labana. And so that's big. I mean, it was not as big, nearly as big then, 30 years ago. But so I talked to in advance and dealt with somebody from HR, but almost all the interview was with the head of rehab. And so, but still, she knew what the salary range was probably going to be. She did not ask me that question because I don't know that they really cared what I expected. I mean, really, they were like, we're going to offer you what you're going to offer. And then, but the negotiation was going to be between me and HR. I mean, they kind of had in their budget what they had in their budget, and they weren't going to go over that.
I have a question on that, which it might just be kind of like a more truthful to wherever you're applying, but kind of how you said, like, they probably didn't really care what you're expecting, but what if you get offered something and it's like way low, like not just like lower than like the setting, the region,
Yeah.
you know, or new graduates, just like super low.
That's a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up. That came up on Tuesday too. And there have been a couple occasions that I know of in recent years that has happened to our alums, and I know because they have called me and talked to me about it. And here's what I've said to them. What I do, my kind of go-to move with that kind of stuff in my own personal and professional life, is I take a list of pros and cons. This might not surprise y'all. And you need to consider the benefit package that they're offering you and what that looks like. So with that, you know, I think when I say benefits, or when people say benefits, they think that means insurance, health insurance. And it does. Is it good health insurance? How much is it costing you per pay period or per month? Is it a lot? Like, is it hundreds and hundreds of dollars? Because that's not really great. Or is it $100 or $200? Because that is good. If it covers the physicians you want, you know, it's not a big fat copay every time you go, you know, that's the kind of thing, you know, you want to talk to somebody who knows healthcare insurance and see what they think about it. I mean, you could even call your physician's office and ask if the billing person would look at it. I mean, they might, or talk to somebody else that knows about that and say, is this decent? And then if it's not really expensive to you, if you feel like at least they're halving it with you, then that's good. Because if you price it on the open market, if you go buy your own health insurance, it might be $1,000 a month. I mean, or more. So that's a lot of money. But benefits is also sick days, vacation days. So how you can do the math pretty easily on that. However much money you make per hour, multiply times 8 hours a day, and that's how much a sick day is worth. That's how much a vacation day is worth. So you could add that, you know, that's how much you're getting. But it's also if they pay any continuing ed, which you need to ask that. In fact, when they ask you, and I meant to say this when we're talking about interviews, when they ask you at the end of an interview, as they will, what questions you have for me, that's a good question to ask. Is there any allotment for employees for continuing ed? You know, and let me say this before I forget about interviews. Never, ever, ever be somebody who doesn't have a single question for the interviewer. Last year, for the first time, a lot of students, when we did these mock interviews, didn't have a single question for the interviewer. At least a third of the class. And it shocked me. I just was like, what? I mean, I couldn't imagine that. So one of the resources I'm about to show y'all, and then I'm going to set you free, is 40 potential questions that you might ask in an interview. Now, don't ask all 40 of them. You know, that's weird. But you don't be that person. But don't ask nothing, because it seems like you're either so shy you can't get a word out, or worse, you're lazy or you don't care. Do some homework and look at this at their website. Look at the people who work in that department. If that's on the website, read their mission statement. Look and see if they've done any kind of service projects or events. Like sometimes they'll do we did when I worked at Le Bonheur, we did stuff like bike-a-thons, where we would check the fit of the bicycles for the kids or their helmets, or, you know, if they've done a car fit thing or a car seat assessment or anything like that. And then bring it up, because it's kind of like sorority rush. Or if you know, I always used to tell my kids, if you go to a party and if you're on a date and you can't think of anything to say, like you're shy or you're just nervous, your two go-tos are pay them a compliment and ask them a question about themselves. Like, I like your shoes, or what kinds of things do you like to do in your spare time? You know, not a yes or no question, because that's too quick and easy. Something that makes them talk. And same in an interview. Not like, come here often, you know, not like that kind of question. But something that, I mean, it's flattering to people. You want to show interest in them, and it makes them remember you, and it makes them feel like you like them, or you have some personality. You don't just sit there like a bump on a log. So that's a good one to ask about continuing ed money. But that's what I would do, is make a pros and cons list. Like, what else besides just the flat salary? Like, say you go in and they offer you $50,000 and you're like, whoo. But if they really have great, maybe they're offering you a month vacation instead of the standard 2 weeks. Maybe they're like, yeah, we knock off at noon on Fridays. I mean, the company my older daughter works for, which is the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, their employees all get off at 1 o'clock on Fridays. And it's because they recognize their mental health, the importance of their mental health. Yes.
I do want to say negotiating does work. The first salary I ever negotiated in 2013, they didn't say anything about salary until I was offered the position. And then when I saw it, I was like, okay, would you be able to do this much? They went up 10,000 more. Like from
Wow.
Yeah, they did. But say if I was just an anxious person, I just wanted a job, just whatever they gave me, they would have been okay with just giving me, the first offer. So
okay, really good advice, Allie.
Yeah.
So, and I like the way you phrase that, that then you got specific. And so if they came in and said, well, okay, 50 or 48.
Right, they were like, well, this is as high as we can go, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a little lower than I went back
Yes.
to, but
you're still compromising,
10,
but
10 above what they originally offered.
So yeah.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It does work.
Yeah. And if you're doing that, I wouldn't go into too much of a sob story, like, oh my God, I can't even pay my car note on that. Don't do that. It's not going to help. Don't try to make them feel sorry for you. Like, I've got student loans, my rent, my car note, I've got a dog to, don't do that. Do what Allie did. Would you be able to?
Yeah.
And it's either yes or no.
Right.
If they're like, no, just say, okay, well, I'm gonna have to put the pencil to the paper and I'll get back to you. You don't have to say yes or no on the spot. And you can ask, how soon do you need an answer? And then, our previous OT program chair used to say, there are very few problems in life that can't be solved by a walk around the lake. So take a proverbial walk around the lake. You may actually drive or get on the phone or go get a drink at a bar and think about it. But you know what I'm saying. Give yourself some time to chew on it mentally. Yes.
So one of my really good friends is graduate school like in the next 2 weeks. She got offered a job for the school system, but then like she hasn't even started yet. But then she got offered a better job at a better site. But she was really nervous about like quitting the job before she started and getting another one. How do you go about that? That sounded kind of awkward, but the second job offer came kind of late. And it was a lot better.
That is a tricky situation. I would be really careful about doing something like that. The therapy world is a small world. And doing something like that, you're taking a risk that you're burning a bridge. I would say, for one thing, try to, don't commit too fast. I mean, don't just commit because you're super excited to have a job. I would say once you've committed, especially if that's in writing, you need to honor it. If you had a situation where it was just much better opportunity, do what you can to disentangle yourself in a professional and respectful way. So what I would do, say that exact thing happened and you did, then your dream job came knocking a few weeks later before you'd started the school job because it's summer. I would go to the HR or, the person who hired me and just lay it out for them and say, I'm new to this process. I need to let you know, I'm really was looking forward to this, but I got an offer that I wasn't expecting. It's for a lot more money. And I feel that I need to take it. I hope that our paths cross again. And it's still a risk that if you ever want to work there again, they may not hire you.
That's kind of like my issue with like not knowing your salary until like basically you're like gonna give you the job and you talk to HR, because if you're applying for multiple jobs, for me, I'm interested in all of them. I would be applying for them. But
Yeah.
what could determine it is the benefits and the salary. So if you don't know the
Yeah.
salary, how am I supposed to choose between one or two and not commit to the other one without knowing? They're not gonna give me the salary. Like, I guess all the jobs I've had in the past, I knew the salary before I even went to the interview. Or like after the
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah.
So I guess it's like not knowing that. How are you supposed to decide a job and know it's the right decision? Or you say, okay, I want it, and then the next day someone offers you 10,000 more. I mean,
Yeah, I don't commit until you have all that information. So, if they're asking you at the interview, are you ready to, is this your first choice? Are you ready? I would just say, from what I know, it seems like a great place to work. I feel like I really connect with people here. And I think I would really fit in here. I need to make sure I have complete information. And then wait and get it all.
Another thing, I mean, everybody's different. So like, say if you did commit already to one and then like 3 weeks later, another job comes, like me, I would say, I would probably be honest and say, I've already committed to a position, but I am available for PRN.
You
if
could
you
do
need
that.
me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's like, I can still help you out, But I just can't work full time as originally.
I mean, that would be a really good
You know what I
move
mean?
to
And they
keep
can turn that
everybody
down.
happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
A
I'm
lot of
definitely
new
not
grads
gonna
will do
quit.
that and work PRN like on weekends every once in a while or holidays and then after a year or so, when you
Yeah,
have
a good
fulfilled that
solid
first
year.
commitment,
Mhm.
then take that.
Right. But I
And that
definitely
way
wouldn't
everybody
wanna
loves you
quit
still. Yeah.
After I've already
I-
committed.
It,
and I'm like,
it
a
gives me a
weekend.
bad feeling.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Well,
Would that be appropriate, like if you had multiple offers, if they made you an offer, be like, hey, I'm, it's substantially lower than another offer I had.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so. And, you know,
Especially if they really wanted you and you knew they wanted you, it'd be like kind of playing the game, like this job really, they can
I
do
think
this.
just be prepared for what might happen. You know,
Yeah, they
think,
turn people on. They definitely do.
I mean, yeah, because they might say, well, I mean, that's what we got. And that might be true. You know, sometimes the department budget, especially if it's a smaller company, that's what they got to offer. And if that, but I still don't think you necessarily hurt yourself. That, I mean, you still, if they're like, we got, you know, this the offer, and just say, I totally respect that. This seems like a really great place to work. Let me put the pencil to the paper. You know, that
I mean,
kind
I would assume they understand the market's the market. So if someone else can afford to pay that, they should be able to afford to pay that.
they should be, but if they can't, they may not get the top candidates, which you guys are. So, yeah, I think that's fair. You just want to say it in a super positive and respectful way, of course. So, yeah. All right. Well, let me turn you guys loose to the to-do list, which is I do have a few things that I want to call your attention to, how to list some specific things on a resume that I got a lot of questions about. This is one way that you can list your EVP project. This is how I list presentations and poster sessions on my resume. I typically you bold your own name if you're did something in a group or with someone else, so that it draws attention to your own name. And then you put in brackets that it was a poster session, and then the conference and where the conference was. This is how a lot of people do it. There are other ways to do it too. And then this is from Professor Flick about how you can list your level 1 fieldwork. You don't have to have that many bullet points. You don't even have to have any bullet points for level 1, or you just might have a couple. So this is just kind of an FYI if you need help there. And then this is your to-do list. Some resources here you may want to bookmark. There's your 40+ questions to ask during an interview, and then a little audio clip here about writing a thank you note, because I will guarantee you, if you write a thank you, or let me say, rephrase, when you write a thank you note after an interview, and an email is okay, a handwritten note is better, but an email is good. And if you are interviewed by multiple people, I would do it to each person. It will set you apart so much. Hardly anybody ever does that anymore. Even just an email, which really takes you like maybe 5 minutes. Look up their email on the website or get their card before you leave. It will really put you up above and reference something that happened during the interview, you know, or a hallway conversation. It will really put you above. Okay, so there's news you can use. And then if you want to work on your Weebly site or your digital resource, your resume, cover letter, any of that, I will let you have at it. I do have there used to be an article out there, and then the link went dead. So I decided we're just make one of our own, and I'll include it in our ebook that we're making of power words that you can use on a resume. I have on the dry erase board in the back. If you think of any good power words, you can put them back there, and then I'll put something together for that, and we'll include it so we'll all have it. So we have about 45 minutes. I'm available for questions, comments, feedback, and peer review each other's as we go. And that's all I got. Yep. Ally?
Oh, so if you, well, you don't have to scroll back up. But I was, the examples of like how to list on your.
Yes,
resume.
yes, yes.
So the conference one is helpful, but then also, me, Stedman and Alexandra and, TNOTA created the microaggressions and the brochures.
Mhm.
How, like, I guess I need to look up how you, reference a brochure, because I've never done that. But that's what we created as a, like a resource on TNOTA's website. Yeah, and it's referenced, on our, presentation that we'll be doing.
Look it up, but my guess is it's gonna be very similar to
Similar?
this. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That's gonna
But
be-
you think that would be good too?
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
100%, yes. Yes, yes. See, that's one of those distinct value things.
Okay, I have two questions. First, I went to pull this up because one of the things you mentioned in the opportunity that I actually put on my page. So I was like, see if you heard it on this. Like, I just noticed that the ones for me, like, it's this is 50, this one works, but I was just going to see if you heard it because what you said here, I said something. I'll make sure I comment on it. So I went to look, I don't know, it doesn't say this beneficiary, so I didn't know.
You should be able to just resubmit. Well, I think you have to go back to the original. Okay. Yeah. Wherever you submitted it. Like you did the first.
And then I have one question. So, I guess like I just put these here, so I wonder, the only three that I thought were like kind of relevant to recently, these three, but like how important do you think that is? It's just like not, I don't know, I guess my community involvement for pastor thing was so much. But like, I'm thinking about for this job, like what was relevant, like what made me stand out, and really like the only three that I thought. And racial Stevens is not even, it's just like going and observing and working on it. But I mean, like a mission trip they have to care about. Didn't have to do with children with disability. That's what I'm saying. And I mean, I just tried it, but that's it. So I'm just like, do I even put, do I just take that section out? What? I mean, you said they such a line.
This thing.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know why that-
I did a separate field work, and then I would use and make it work.
Word. Field work experience.
Yes, yep. And then I would put,
Where this
I would just leave just straight field work. I would put that under work. And then I would put, yes, I would put like shine. You have room where it has to do with children with disabilities.
I mean, it's true, that's cool.
One second, let me say something. So she's not hanging out for no reason. Hey, Erin, you don't have to hang out on the Zoom if you don't want to.
Oh, sorry. All these windows open. I can't get to the mute button quick enough or to unmute.
No, that's okay. I just want you to feel like you were, stopped.